quick note on the audio quality of this one. We had a little bit of trouble the first like 5 to 7 minutes. We reset and kept going. I apologize for that, but please, this is such an important episode, such an important topic. So I just wanted to let you know after 6 or 7 minutes, we're smooth sailing. Okay. Thanks to all of you and wishing you a beautiful day. All right. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Behind the Human. I'm your host, Marc Champagne. It's my job to unpack the stories and mental fitness practices of people living at the top of their game, personally and professionally. Today we have Jason Wahler on the show, known for his appearances on MTV's Laguna Beach and the Hills. He's a TV personality and recovery advocate who transformed his life after battling addiction. He now dedicates himself to raising awareness about substance abuse and mental health, working closely with various organizations and using his platform to inspire and support those facing similar challenges. And I just add, just a stand-up human. I mean, we haven't known each other that long, but like you can tell when you have conversations with people, you pick up the energy and just the vibe there. And like I said before we even hit record, I mean, I'm honored to hold space for someone like yourself who has been down a hell of a ride and is here kind of revisiting that ride for the greater good of, I think, a lot of people around the world. And at least to me, that's really, that's something to be proud of. So thank you, Jason, for coming on the show and for the work that you do.
No, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate that. It's an honor to be able to be here and to be able to shed light and hopefully create some relatability and some connectivity with individuals that are out there. And, appreciate you holding the space to be able to do that. Thank you.
If I strip away basically the entire bio I read and the titles and all that stuff, how would you answer the question, who are you today?
I am a man in recovery. I am a husband. I'm a father. I'm a friend. I have purpose. I have passion. I'm accountable. I'm trustworthy. I'm reliable. I love the Lord. And really enjoy life today.
Who were you around the ages of 12, 13?
I was lost. I was scared. Was struggling severely with OCD, mental health issues. Trying to fit in. Athletic. I was good at baseball. Loved being outdoors. But in a very precarious place of starting that process of discovery.
That's a lot, though. I mean, if I think of, I have two young boys, and my eldest is 8, and I think, in a few years or so, I mean, that's a lot. It's a lot of emotion, and what comes to mind is like confusion at that age. How did you? Let's just, there's a lot of detail, obviously, with your backstory, but I from my research, it seems like that's kind of the age range where it seems like a lot of what you've battled and have dealt with started around, that 12, 13 age range. Like what was going on? Like why that check-in?
It's bizarre because I grew up with an amazing family, amazing parents. We're still married till today. For me, it's very important to have that stability and that structure within a home, good morals, good values.
Yeah.
Amazing. I have 2 brothers and a sister. Had a very probably idyllic life growing up in Laguna Beach by the water. Did a lot of amazing things. And so I think it's hard, especially when I, would share with people, it's like I didn't have this troubled path necessarily, right?
Yeah.
And so there was nothing.
Which doesn't make it any easier. Like, that's the hard part, right? Like,
correct.
But just because you had good parents, you're not allowed to not be struggling with something.
Like, it would be easier if there was something major that happened. Like I was, major incident that come to fruition, and we went on that and let it go. But I think just through developmental stages, puberty, just again, is the interactions with other kids at that age. I mean, you start to grow from being very innocent and now starting to care what people think. Um, but then again, really struggling with that piece of OCD was challenging because even though I was expressing, and that's why I gave you two segments, right? I gave you kind of like what was going on underneath and the negativity on with stuff with mental health, the OCD, the identity crisis, all that. Because on the other side, though, I was really, and I believe this, and there's truth to it too, is outgoing, athletic, part of the popular group, had girlfriends, kind of like anything that a 13-year-old would want. I'd had, but you take both of those things, and I'm literally was living a double life at the age of 12 or 13 years old, right? It's like
Yeah.
what was true and what was not, and so on the outside, I was trying to really be the things that were the positive, but again, you go behind closed doors, and then I'm dealing with these underlying issues that I'm dealing with. And so it created a lot of confusion. Seeing psychiatrists and therapists, and again, having parents that were supportive there. It was just even, and this is the late 90s, early 2000s, learning how to try to communicate and effectively share what is going on was a challenge within itself, and so um, it was hard. So, through that process, I mean, that's when I ended up discovering, alcohol, a couple years later. Psychiatrist and gave me medication. It helped mitigate the symptoms, never dealt with the underlying issues. Alcohol comes into my life, creates a further sense of freedom, at least so I thought. And it gave me the alleviation that I was looking for at the time. And then it became a full-fledged relationship with alcohol that became a tremendous downward spiral for years.
Yeah. When did you start consciously working at the problem? Or do you even realize that there was a challenge there? Like when alcohol became, whoa, there's something not right here.
Look, I mean, addiction is a disease of denial, right? And so for many years, I was not willing to accept the fact that I was struggling with alcoholism, even though the writing was all over the wall with the arrests, the ruining of relationships. I mean, there was just so many things that were there. Um, but I think I'd say it was probably in my mid 20s, or no, early 20s. I'm sorry, early 20s when I really started to realize that there was a problem. Because I started my treatment stints at 17, 18, 19, 20. I mean, from the ages of, you know, 18 to 23, I'd gone to 12 different programs by then. And again, that was a lot of that was for court, that was for appeasing, girlfriends or family members. And, it was really, never really came to a place for myself. And it's so crazy because that time was also just like 18 to 23 was such a blur going through all of that. I mean, just being on the TV shows that we were on, dealing with, the depths of addiction. It was so far gone with that identity crisis, just with all of those things. That whole time was such a blur. And it's crazy because as I've gotten more sobriety time, I'm starting to get memories now back that I've never even remembered back then. But to answer your question, I think it's, I'd say, I think there was probably spurts of willingness and or motivation that came in towards the latter of those treatment stints that came into play. But again, my addiction, it was severe. Again, like I'd stated to you, not only all the treatments that I'd went to, all the different arrests, addiction took me to contemplation and, but not only contemplation, but attempting suicide. And, I mean, I was just at a place where, I didn't really have much fight left. And, I've shared this many times before, but the real moment of clarity for me was when I was sitting in a therapy office with my mom and dad. And,
Yeah.
I've never seen my dad break down before, besides when his mother had passed away. And, we've been in this setting many times, but for some reason this was different. And he literally, just looked over and just is like, mom and I don't know what to do anymore. Our marriage is struggling. We're suffering. We're literally laying in bed like two planks of wood, waiting for the phone call that you're dead. And that was really where the moment of clarity came in for me. And there was just like this light, this aha moment, um, where I was like, look, this isn't something, I don't care enough about myself right now at the time. I care enough about you guys, and this is going to be something that I will go and do again. And so, July 23rd, 2010 is when I really entered into recovery.
Wow. As a dad now, like, have you ever thought about that moment from the perspective of being a dad and like how hard that must have been for your parents?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of times that I've reflected. I mean, now that I'm a father and I have, my own children, and what I'm going to do, differently, or how I'm going to incorporate communication. And I'm already taking steps to develop and build the rapport and the trust with my kids to be able to have open dialogue and open communication with them. And my parents were there and they were supportive, but again, it was, they didn't have the tools or the knowledge on how to address or to talk about it. And so that's what I'm being very intentional about, is further educating myself on how to address these issues, because there's pre-genetic disposition to it. I mean, my kids have a 50% chance of struggling with this. And so,
Yeah.
something that's on the forefront of, for me, but it's, I've definitely had time to reflect and just shed my gratitude and appreciation for my parents, because they never gave up on me. They were always there and very supportive. Um, and
You-
it's, there was, and that was the other thing is, I mean, even just at that moment, just right around the time with that therapy session after, I remember looking at my parents and I'm just like, God, they've aged 10 years, and just the last in the matter of 2 years, just, I could see that on them. And, it was just, it pulled heavily on me,
Yeah.
and, but I think it's important too to address is love and care about them so much, but also, they struggle severely with codependency. They struggle severely with enabling. Wherever there's an alcoholic or an addict, there's a codependent, and sometimes they're just as sick, if not sicker. And my parents, oftentimes in the depths of it, were throwing pillows when I should have fallen, and
Hmm.
bailing me out of situations. And again, that's
Yeah,
not
those
to
those.
not keep me alive, because there's a whole conversation we can have on, people hitting bottom. But I think, just with courts and jail, and there's different things that, I think that they could have, let me suffer the consequences for, that could have been really good learning experiences. But, it is what it is. But there could be a lot to unpack there if you wanted to address the part that they played. But overall, very, very grateful for them. And they're just incredible
Yeah.
people.
But I think you bring up an interesting point around the codependence that I don't think, at least I heard your wife talk about this, and I didn't think about it because I think in general, like, people are good humans, and we don't want to see our loved ones suffer any more than that, they're already suffering. I remember your wife shared something to the fact of, I think you were, I don't know, maybe it was like 3, 4 days or something that you had gone really hard and were just basically had to sleep, and she was either calling or emailing into, wherever you were working, basically lying, right? Just saying, oh, yeah, like he's super sick or something like that. And I know now, I think in retrospect, realizing like maybe shouldn't have done that actually. But again, like I think it goes against our human nature to just like love and support.
Yeah.
So how
Yeah.
do you talk to people about that now?
When it comes to codependency,
Yeah.
and just enabling, I mean, there's not a there's not a one size fits all model. I mean, there's, again, just like addiction, it's very multifaceted, and again, the circumstances that somebody's going through with a loved one that's struggling with addiction, is they're all different, and there's different
Yeah.
variables that come into play. And so it's, it's hard to just give a blanketed statement without having true understanding and knowledge of what that person's going through. But I think the biggest thing that you can, when people are in that state is what you're doing. Is it supporting them and getting better, or is it continuing and enabling them to stay sick? I mean, that's the question that you have to ask yourself, number
Yeah.
one.
It's a good
But
question.
number two is ultimately is getting educated on what the individual is going through. I always advise people to seek their own counsel when it comes to like a therapist and stuff, to make sure that they're addressing their own issues while getting guidance and direction to navigate through this. And then what are the areas that you can be best supportive, that isn't going to, suck up and take away from your life. I think that's the problem, is people can overly insert themselves. And so on my end, when I'm dealing with individuals that are struggling, I'm very clear on what I can and can't do, and I'm definitely, I even start by telling people it's like, look, I'm willing to provide guidance and direction and insight, but I'm not willing to work harder than you. I'll meet you almost in the middle. You got to give 51%. I'll give you 49. I'm definitely not going to be doing the work for you. But it's different. I mean, the way I deal with my sibling that's struggling versus my aunt versus my cousin versus a friend versus extended family. And it's not that there's more favoritism or things like that, but the situations are just also different,
Yeah.
that you come into play. But it's really identifying and creating clear boundaries of what you're willing to do and not willing to do, is the most important. And just out of straight transparency, as I've gotten a lot more versed in addiction and I've obviously been around and doing this for my own personal struggles, trials and tribulations. I've been in this for 20 plus years, doing a lot of work on myself through all the treatments, all the therapy, all the psychiatrist, everything that I've gone through. But to come to find out that, I too struggle with codependency enabling. So that's something that I actually started just as of a couple of weeks ago, is got myself plugged into Al-Anon. And actually I'm getting more engaged with that because I'm wanting to create better boundaries in my life. And it's not necessarily, yes, I deal with a lot of people that struggle with addiction, and I deal with a lot of people that struggle with issues. But on the flip side, I'm attending more, not because of that. I'm attending more because of the people pleasing and, and receiving validation in areas that maybe aren't the most healthy. And
Yeah.
so I'm in this journey now too, whereas my wife is like I am with addiction. She's much more versed when it comes to codependency. Um, and you can provide, I feel like I can provide decent guidance for somebody, but on my end, it's something I'm wanting to explore further. And that's what's funny is I have a lot of the answers to a degree that I could provide you when it comes to codependency enabling, but I need to practice what I preach. And so I'm getting support in that area of my life as well.
Yeah. Well, and so on this show in general, I mean, usually everything we're talking about has some sort of link to mental fitness. We'll get into the tools in a minute, but on my side too, I'm not a fan of saying like, here's the prescription for your mind, or like these are the tools, these are the strategies that work for you, right? But I mean, there's inspiration, I think, in that, and then and that's what I found with this show as well. It's like someone may say something like, oh, I resonate with that, just like what I picked up on what your wife said. I'm like, I never thought about that from that perspective, and even your story around, we're talking about drugs and alcohol for the most part for addiction, but I feel like there's a lot of addiction just in maybe less subtle ways. Like even when you're talking about kind of people pleasing, like that's what I struggle with. It's like, well, you catch yourself in the loop, like, why am I putting myself through this mental torture, like asking these questions around, like, did I say something, that wasn't super, aligned? Like, is it like, and you just go into this thing, and in a way I'm addicted, something I'm working on, addicted to, I don't know what I'm addicted to, the trauma of that, or the torture. I'm not sure, but I mean, I feel like everyone listening has something.
Well, it's something, I mean, for yourself, it's something to uncover, because what is it that what is it that you're seeking validation from and comfort from in that area, right? And so
Yeah.
I think everybody struggles with something. Everybody wants to feel a part of, everybody wants to be connected, everybody wants to feel loved, and again, is some people have more dangerous addictions than others, but I think at the end
Yeah.
of the day, everybody struggles. And whether you overwork, you are too obsessed with exercising, whether it's sex, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether it's gambling, whatever it is that you may be struggling with. And if you're questioning it, is like, I think I challenge the people. It's not to say like right off the bat, oh, I'm an alcoholic, or I'm an addict, or I have this or I have that. It's like, hey, just ask yourself the simple question is, hey, is this adding or subtracting to my life?
Yeah.
And really assess that and really see and address that, because you know the answer if you're listening to your intuition, and that's something that you can take ownership on, because if you don't create awareness, you're not going to be able to create action from it. And so I think it's being able to have those conversations with yourself, with whatever it is that you're struggling with, to bring the light to it, that like, hey, look, I need to make a shift with this, because everybody struggles with something, dude. That's
Yeah.
I mean, anybody that comes on here and says they don't, they got something deeper to look at, because life is all about problem solving. I mean, and that's where the greatest opportunity for growth comes from is through trials and tribulations. It's like my whole story is my greatest deficits have become my greatest assets. And for me, it's, I think it's, especially when it comes to addiction and substance abuse is like, for me personally, it's important to have people that are educated and having clinicians and doctors around that. But where I gained the most knowledge was with the ones that have lived experiences. I connected more with that. And so,
Sure.
um, again, it's important.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about, so there's, of course, recovery programs and therapists and so forth that you alluded to, but I'd love to know, even present day, like what are some of the foundational, non-negotiable tools that you deploy? Kind of, I think twofold. One, to really continue to check in with yourself, right? Like see kind of what's going on. Like I said, like you mentioned, I mean, that works for really anything that we're going through. We've got to get the data, right? We've got to pause and like, what's going on here? And then, yeah, then the other, just, the tools that allow you to stay on course for you and live a life that's, I'll use some of your language, live a life that's worth living.
Yeah, man. No, I mean, look, something that I've been that I hammer down on is consistency and structure creates safety. And so I think it's very important to have a routine, especially if you struggle with substance abuse or mental health. I mean, you look at like a child for a perfect example, a 2 or 3 year old, right? Or even a 6 month old. When they are in routine, when it comes to their feeding, when it comes to their napping, when it comes to the restroom and so on and so forth, they're much better off when they're in that routine than when they're disrupted, right? If you're trying to keep
So
them up
true.
late or they're out of their area, it's no different for adults. And so for me, I've had to get really structured with a routine that is something that works for me. And so every single morning, and again, I'm not 100% perfect with all of this stuff, but I've built up enough of a routine where I have consistency with it. And when I don't do some of these things that I'll share, I feel off. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's interesting because I built that healthy habit. But I wake up, I do a morning meditation. From there, I'll do my gratitude list. It's 3 things I'm grateful for.
Mm.
Not only
Hold up.
what
We're real super tactical on this one. The morning meditation, what does that look like for you? Like
morning
are you using?
meditation
Yeah.
is. Yeah, morning meditation is simply just I have multiple different apps. I mean, I usually will turn to Calm,
Mm-hmm.
and just do something for 5 to 7 minutes just to get
Okay.
my mind quiet and just really be in a place where I can just reset before I get up, which is something that's really important. Gratitude list, 3 things I'm grateful for, not only what, but why. That's where the meat really resides. People, as opposed to just being like, I'm grateful for my friend John. It's like, well, okay, but I'm grateful for my friend John because he's somebody I can connect with. He's somebody I can confide in. He's somebody that gives me good advice. I mean, there's just a lot more depth when you bring out the why and what you're grateful for. And then I actually send that off to about 9 or 10 different people, which creates a form of connection, which I think is really important. So from there, they
Same people all the
reciprocate.
time?
Same people
Like,
all the time. Then they
okay.
reciprocate, and I'll slowly
Hmm.
add people onto this list. And it's a list that's been growing. And some
That's
people fall
nice.
off, but that's a great way to create connection in the morning. And again, it's good to see just kind of where everybody's at because it's a simple way to check in. And then I will turn to the Bible and read
Yeah.
some scripture, which is really important for me. And some days it's a couple minutes, some days it's longer. And then I pray, and then after that I go about my day. And sometimes it's not always in that exact order. But exercise is something also that I really incorporate into my life. I think exercise is very, very beneficial. And so I do that 3 to 4 times a week, that I'll have in there. But one of the most important things, and I'll go about my day. Some days throughout the week, I still go to therapy. I have a men's accountability group that I attend, and then I have a Bible study, which I actually went to this morning. It's every Thursday, and that's just a group of guys. There's 7 or 8 of us, and it's not only to dive into the Word, but ultimately to be able to get this open and vulnerable. By expressing vulnerability, it creates humility, and to have a group of guys be in a place that can do that, and all
Yeah.
walks of life going through. Again, every single one at that table is going through their own trials and tribulations, and it's great to have that camaraderie and connectivity. But again, is after that morning routine at night, one of the things that is really important to me is like a reprieve on the day, and it's to identify the areas where I'd fallen short, The areas that I can improve upon. Is there amends that need to be made? But more importantly, also, is the areas that I did well, and to give myself grace.
Yeah.
And what that does is it really creates an opportunity for me to close out the day, to start the next day fresh. And also one other really important thing that I do, that I've been doing for a while with my daughter, is before bed every single night too, is I actually do 4 questions with her. And this is about creating the connection. And like we talked about in the beginning, an opportunity for me to really develop this rapport with her, even though she's 7 years old. And we started this, we've been doing a gratitude list for years, but then this newer process of these 4 questions has been, just, I don't know, 5 or 6 months that we've been doing this. But we actually will sit down and I'll ask her, what was good today? And then I'll ask her, what was something that she could improve upon. And then I'll ask her, what's she grateful for? And then what's her goal for tomorrow? And we both answer. And it's just an amazing way to connect. And it's over the course of time already. I mean, she's being very open and vulnerable. Like, I was mean to this girl was mean to me. And it just allows us to get into a deeper connection with one
Yeah.
another. And so,
How old is
again,
she?
she's 7.
7. Oh,
Yeah.
amazing. Okay.
And so those are, I mean, like I said, from the meditation, the prayer, the gratitude list, and reading the Bible, and then the thing with the daughter, uh, uh, the things I did well and the things that I need to improve. Those happen daily. But again, the other pieces that add in are the gym, which again is very important, and then the Bible studies and the men's accountability group. So
Yeah.
I put my program as a very high priority, and it goes basically, my relationship with God is number one, my sobriety is number two, and my family is number three. And if it's not in that order, it tends to not go that well. And so
Yeah.
it's taken me a lot of time to really shape and formulate this game plan. And again, it's changing. I'll add and incorporate new things. Like I said, one of the things that right now it's not a part of the daily routine, but like for me going to Al-Anon, I have a mentor that I'm working with and going through the process in that, but it's something that I'm slowly incorporating. And it may take one of the things that I'm doing out, because this is going to be a new insert, but it's constantly evolving. And the way I look at it is just being where my feet are, and just understanding that my life is like, it's on a pottery wheel. It's constantly being
Mhm.
shaped and molded. And I had to get to the understanding that, especially just is from a balance perspective, right? Like, balance is a mirage. There's no such thing as perfect balance. My life used to be, I don't know if people are gonna be able to see this, but I'm giving the lines of, like, my used to just be very up and down, up and
Yeah.
down. I'm trying to make my life more just kind of like, how can I just,
Yeah.
how can the lows not be so low and the highs not be so high, and create that fluidity?
Well, this is where the tools help, right? Like, and to your point, I mean, they're always evolving, but I think probably the most important thing about what you're sharing is that you have a kit. You have a kit of these tools that obviously help in, with the check-ins and understanding, like, okay, I'm a little off, like, what's going on, right? But and then it's I just find it prevents us from spiraling, right? Because, like, okay, you catch yourself earlier, and then you can deploy something. Like, maybe it's the men's accountability group. I say that one because I've been in the men's group for about 7 years, and I can't imagine not having that group, having gone through, those ups and downs as well. Um, but just having the tools, like, that's where, because I work with a lot of corporate teams and whatnot, and just most people just don't have them, and they're super accessible.
Well, and that's the thing, like, when it comes to 100%, and when it comes to addiction, right? Like, drugs and alcohol were our solution. There weren't the problems. It was the underlying issues that we needed to address, right? And so it's like, when you remove the distractions of alcohol and drugs, and you deal with the core underlying issues, it's procuring and acquiring the tools to be able to deal with those things. And so it's important. It's a daily reprieve, right? It's something for me that I do this stuff on a daily basis, because it's important that I focus just one day at a time with this.
The last thing on the tools, I think, especially as parents, is I don't know about you, but there was some periods where my wife and I were like, okay, are we, like, we're doing the best we can, of course, like, and especially being in this work, it's almost like you kind of have to laugh sometimes a little bit about. I'm like, oh, that's probably going to come up in their men's group when they're all there, but, like, we're doing our best, and I think, at least for us, that's been the most helpful, and you're clearly doing the same thing. And I'm going to borrow some of those questions with my 8-year-old. is like you're giving them the tools, like, because we can't like they're all going to go through their own things, like we can't predict all of that stuff, and but like I can at least feel confident that they've got some stuff to work with, like they whatever that is, right? Like at least they have some tools to that we I just feel like most of us, like our age, definitely our parents, did not have. No one talked
Yeah.
about it.
No, 100%, man. And I think it's so important to integrate them now. I mean, times have changed. Times are way different than what they were 20, 30 years ago. And
Yeah.
it's important to be able to have them address and identify what is really going on to be able to put a game plan into action.
Yeah. So what do you, I mean, you're working on quite a few things, but I mean, is there anything you want to kind of put some attention to? Like I know you're working with Dr. uh Amen
Dr.
holding the
Amen, yeah.
and the foundation and so forth. Like what are you doing day to day these days? Like what's going on?
Yeah, so basically, I'll give you kind of an overview, and I'd love to touch base on one of the really cool projects that we're working on. But so yeah, I'm the director of Dr. Daniel Amen's Change Your Brain Foundation, which has been incredible. You know, the primary goal there in our mission is to end mental illness by creating a revolution in brain health, and we're doing that through
Yeah,
research, education, and scholarships, and love doing the work that we're doing there. It's incredible. And talk about mental health. I mean, it's really shedding light on that. And I think it was crazy when I was talking to him that, you know, mental health is one of the only medical professions that they don't look at the organ that they treat. And if you really think about that, it's pretty fascinating, because if you have anything wrong with your heart, your kidneys, your liver, you know, your pancreas, they're going to do CAT scans, MRIs, you know, whatever it may be. But for the last 150 years, we've been basically doing the same thing we have since Abraham Lincoln, clustering
crazy.
symptoms that throw medication at it. So love the work that we're doing there. I've been working with A-List Health, which is the first ever JACO accredited at-home treatment provider. Primarily work with like C-level executives, athletes, and entertainers. It's for the discretionary purposes of people that don't want to go into a brick and mortar, so treatment is actually brought to them.
Oh,
And
okay.
then the third thing is actually SOBRsafe, SOBRsure, which is this first ever transdermal alcohol monitoring detection band, which is something that I've been really, really excited about, because it's a new tool and a new resource that they're bringing to the table to you know, for people that are coming out of treatment to really reestablish trust and accountability with individuals. But also it's a great prevention tool for like teen drivers. But it's they just came out with their new version, which is the second version, which it looks, like I said, it's you can see it here. It's a sleek, looks almost just like a Fitbit, but
Yeah.
it's 24/7 alcohol monitoring. It's got band removable notifications. It's got GPS tracking. It's water resistant. It's waterproof. But it's a great way for those that are in early recovery, to really be able to hold themselves accountable. But on the
It's the
flip side,
reminder.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, just as a reminder, but also to give you a couple examples for it, is for individuals that are, you know, let's say you had a 18, 19-year-old son or daughter that's coming out of treatment and they struggled with alcohol, but you're the parents that are supporting them. You know, part of the deal with them is, as they come out, and you want to have a level of accountability with them, like, hey, you're going to wear this, so we know that you're doing well, and we don't have to micromanage what it is that you're doing. If you're still
Yeah.
wanting us to pay for your car, your apartment, or your cell phone bill, or whatever those things, like, again, we'll meet you in the middle. This is something that you're going to have to do to show that level of accountability. On the flip side, to another part, which is scary, but it's also a very real situation, is, you know, there's a husband and a wife. The husband's traveling constantly for work, and the wife struggled with alcoholism, and they have young little kids, and she was drinking and driving with the kids. And so again,
Mm.
while he's gone, he wanted to be able to have this as a, you know, she went to treatment, was able to get stabilized and start a life in recovery. But again, a way to reestablish and build trust, especially when it's not just about her, but it's about the kids. And so there's many factors that it's come into
Yeah.
play with, and it's very, very, you know, beneficial.
Well,
Um,
just on that one though, Jason, like I feel there, I feel like one of the biggest benefits would be just removing so much like mental stress in like the trusting process, and like because I imagine you're always questioning, right? Like, and like kind of that mental battle of, okay, like I don't want to be like your point, I don't want to be micromanaging, I don't want to be always asking, and but at the same time, like you know, there's been history and stuff like that. So I feel like a product like this just removes all of that. As yeah, there's the physical safety elements that you're mentioning, but that's a lot of mental pressure on
yeah,
everyone.
no, it is. And again, it's just a great way, and it's a lot more humane too. I think that's the other thing
Yeah.
versus people that are like on breathalyzers. I mean, for somebody such as myself,
Yeah.
when I was on a breathalyzer, it's like, back in the day, it's like I'm on a date and it's like, oh, hold on, I got to go breathalyze real quick. It's like it's very, it's not, it was very, it was humiliating, right? It just
Yeah.
wasn't a thing. But like this would have been amazing for me because again, we got into this, we just touched the surface on some of my story. But after having, about 5 years of sobriety, I ended up relapsing, and something like this would have been instrumental in the early stages of my recovery with my wife, right? I mean, we had a young kid, and it was
Yeah.
something, again, for us to be able to reestablish and build trust, and again, to have to remove that question of like, God, dude, is he drinking or is he not? You know what I mean? Just again, it's like, hey, this is a non-negotiable. If we're going to stay here, and this is going to be something for us, I need this for not only myself but the safety of our child. And so
Yeah.
there's that piece. But again, where I'm really excited where it's going as well is for teen drivers, right? I think everybody's against drinking and driving, and I think it's very important for your children. I mean, if my daughter was of driving age right now, she was wanting to go out to the football game or go to a party or something like that where we have a zero tolerance with alcohol, yeah, she's going to wear it, especially if she's driving too. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of different variations that this can come into play, and I'm really excited to see where this product goes. And it's not for everybody, right? It's just another
Yeah.
tool in the toolkit. And I think,
Totally.
again, it's like what we were talking about is being able to have accessibility to all the tools that we have, and it's important to just have another option that's out there.
Yeah. It's exciting. I'm super excited for you. It just seems like if I come full circle to how you checked in with the "Who are you?" question at the top. I mean, I feel all of that emotion, and like you can feel the energy around these projects, and uh like a real authentic desire to help as many people as possible, right? So you don't have to go through a lot of the hardship that you went through.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that, and I'm just so grateful for where I am in life, you know what I mean? And what I'm learning through this is also what's predictable is preventable, right? And so if we can bring awareness to some of these things that are there to help mitigate people having to go through these trials and tribulations, that's what the goal is. And for me, I want to be an open book. I used to carry a ton of shame around, but now I no longer carry shame. I this is my story, and this is what and I'm comfortable in my own skin, and I'm comfortable with who I am. I can look in the mirror today and say I'm proud of myself, and
Yeah.
that was not always the case. But uh this journey's has definitely been a roller coaster for sure.
Yeah.
But it's just, I want to be a beacon of hope for those that are lost.
Just statistically speaking, the people listening to the show, there is a good amount of people that have are struggling with addiction in many different forms. So if you think about them listening right now and putting yourself back, in that place, like what did you need to hear for you? And I know it's individual, but
Yeah.
what would have been helpful for you to hear
I
right
mean,
now?
look, I'll just tell you what I ended up doing to get back, to where I needed to be was I got completely open and honest, right? I had to be in a place of complete surrender. I had to be in a place of complete willingness to accept the fact that I needed help. Um, and then, from that standpoint is reached out, knowing that you're not alone in this process is super important. But I think there's so much power in reaching out and asking for guidance and direction. I mean, it goes back to just the power of connection. I mean, the longest living study at Harvard is around happiness, and that's through human connection. And so, again, getting open and honest, being completely, willing to make that shift, reach out and know that you're not alone in this process, and that there is a solution.
Last question for you, brother. If you think about when you're physically no longer on this planet, how would you love your kids to describe who dad was?
Wow, that's a really good question, man. He was always there for us. He's somebody that we could always turn to, and know that he would always have our back. Um, he was always present. He was somebody that really instilled us with the morals and values that life is all about the love you have, the memories you create, and the legacy you leave behind. That he helped out a lot of people. That he, got out of his own way and was had a lot of humility. to make a clear path for those that may be struggling. That he loved the Lord, and that he was a good husband. He was really good to our mom, and that he was just an example to others.
It's beautiful. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Chris Gethard, and I'm very excited to tell you about Beautiful Anonymous, a podcast where I talk to random people on the phone. I tweet out a phone number, thousands of people try to call. You talk to one of them, they stay anonymous. I can't hang up. That's all the rules. I never know what's going to happen. We get serious ones. I've talked with meth dealers on their way to prison. I've talked to people who survived mass shootings. Crazy funny ones. I talked to a guy with a goose laugh, somebody who dresses up as a pirate on the weekends. I never know what's going to happen. It's a great show. Subscribe today, Beautiful Anonymous.